Hello and welcome to Mastering Dungeons, a very special post-PAX episode as Shawn is away, and I am joined by the awesome Chris Honkala, aka Treantmonk, who runs Treantmonk's Temple, a fantastic YouTube where you break down all the D&D. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. This is, in all honesty, this is my favorite podcast, so I'm honored to be here.
That is very, very kind. It's been awesome seeing you comment on the YouTube channel, and I'm like, he really is watching us? That's awesome. I told several friends that you were going to be on, and they were like, what? Really? That's amazing. So thanks. The love is mutual. And we've invited you particularly because you have that laser focus for breaking down Unearthed Arcanas, and I've enjoyed watching your videos that cover it. And the Unearthed Arcanas we've talked about last episode is very dark sunny, so we're going to get into that. We're going to do a very little bit of news and a couple of listener questions. And I have to start with a correction. This is like 2 corrections in 3 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, I mentioned Premier organizers the right for the D&D Adventurers League, and I said they were in Scotland, Singapore. And what my brain meant to say was it's the Philippines where the group The Greasy Snitches creates AL Adventures. So my apologies, Greasy Snitches. Please don't snitch on me. And the group in Scotland, by the way, is called Tabletop Scotland. And there has been some recent news from them and rumblings. And I hear we're going to hear a bunch of stuff about Adventures League in the near future. And in the meantime, if you're interested, Greg Marks, who works behind the scenes on AL, has a blog that he's been maintaining. And he is posting some updates there currently around Greyhawk. But here we will have some news on Adventures League in the near future. Now, for our listener corner, Chris, I invite you to share your thoughts on some of these. We've got 2 questions. The first one from Jaron Mathis via Patreon, who says, if you were placed under some dark curse and had to pick just one game to play, that is a dark curse, which would you choose between Draw Steel, Daggerheart, or a D&D? I know you love them all, but if you had to choose, how are you feeling about this, Chris?
I won't surprise anyone. It would be, for me, it would be D&D. I like playing other games, but if I had only one to choose, that would be a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I share a similar view, though I have to say, I've only just scratched the surface of both Daggerheart and Draw Steel. And Draw Steel and Daggerheart both have things that I really love, especially from the 4th edition side of things, as well as the narrative side of things. My latest video was on how I love the complications that are in Draw Steel. They're really cool. So I need to play these more to see, could another game, steal me from my lifelong love of D&D? It's absolutely possible. I've come close with other games in the past. And I've had times in my life, I don't know if you've had this, where I just burned out and stopped playing D&D for a few years.
I have drifted from D&D at times. There was probably 3 years where almost every game I played was GURPS, right? So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so that can happen, right? Where we sort of, it's not like we're really broken up, but we just take a break, an extended break. So it's entirely possible. So for now, I think we're both picking D&D. Shocking nobody. N via Bluesky says, I've been thinking about Daggerheart lately. The current simplicity of the system is appealing, but I'm wondering how that will feel after a year of play with character options for a class that are much thinner than D&D. As game designers, what are your thoughts? And what do you think? You've played some Daggerheart.
I played a little bit of Daggerheart.
Yeah.
I didn't find it all that simple, as compared to other games, right? I'm not saying it was too complex or anything, but if I was thinking simple systems, I'd be thinking Shadow Dark or something like that, not Daggerheart.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what they mean by classes, like less choices of class. What do they mean by thinner, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll turn it around and say this. This is what was in my brain about this question, which is that I think Daggerheart, when I first read it, I thought this is really complicated. I think people will bounce off of the complexity. And what I've come to believe now is actually it's very good at tricking you into feeling that the complexity is simple. Things like the character sheet that goes on the side, right, and shows you like what the different parts of your character sheet go, that little sideboard piece really help break it down. The fact that the the format for the powers is very, very similar, makes you forget that you're seeing a very different structure. So I think it kind of tricks you into thinking it's simple, which is good design, right? That's really neat.
Yeah. Though there's a lot of things to keep track of, right? Like there's a lot of bookkeeping as you play, I noticed. After a year, I mean, nobody knows how they're going to feel after a year, right? You just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And even with Draw Steel, we've had some recent feedback from folks because we've been talking about it. And they've said, hey, I've been running, these adventures. It's totally easy for me now. Like, yeah, you might think it's hard when you first start, but it becomes second nature. And I'm tracking, my heroic currency. I'm tracking, which abilities I've used and how, and which ones I have available. And it all just becomes second nature. And so that may be what we find a year from now, is that when people are playing these games, they find it's really not super complicated and or that the complexity fades into the background. It's possible.
I'm just going to shout out, if for people, this isn't Daggerheart, it's Draw Steel, but for people who are interested in Draw Steel, there's a YouTuber, Tom on D20 Play, who runs Draw Steel, and he is very good at managing all this stuff, right? I've just really impressed with how he does that. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by that, watch a couple of his actual plays, and you'll get what he's doing, and I think it could be helpful.
Yeah, and sometimes that's, the games that cause us to think about a lot, we end up engaging with it a lot. And once it's no longer scary and new, it's actually super engaging and fun. And looking at Tom Christie run those games, he's clearly using all those tools for his fun, right? Like to create neat encounters. And so I think that's a real potential of both Daggerheart and Draw Steel. You can have both Draw Steel and Daggerheart have like the environment type things where the environment's attacking you and doing things to you. And as you get good at it, then you can add more of those things into your encounters and have a blast with them. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for those questions. For some very brief news, 2 items. And the first one is Acquisitions Incorporated has rewritten reality. I was fortunate to watch this show live at PAX. And I was expecting, I had, the whole question of like, what will Critical Role use for season 4? And what will AC Inc. do? I was fortunate to guess correctly. And we have the Critical Role team still playing D&D. But AC Inc. very early on said something about how Omendron's son had a heart. And I said, well, we're done here, folks. I know where this is going. And then a little bit later, they talked about needing the Apocalypse dagger. And then they said they had to plunge this into the heart. And I mean, I just thought it was so obvious, but I'm not sure the crowd actually followed along the majority of it. They knew this was happening. And I even leaned over to a good friend and said, it's obvious, right? It's Daggerheart. And she said, oh. And I thought that was awesome. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just overthinking it and I was expecting it. But indeed, the game ended with plunging a dagger into a heart and rewriting reality. And apparently the next con, we'll see what happens. And so I think it's pretty clear that Perkins and Crawford will be running Daggerheart for AC Inc., which I think is a very smart thing. You still have a D&D show. You have Matt Mercer running Daggerheart. You now have the amazing duo of Perkins and Crawford running Daggerheart. So that's all really exciting.
I mean, not super surprising.
Right. But yeah, very, very neat. I'm looking forward to seeing how the gang plays Daggerheart, because I love all these people. I've met them and worked with them, but they don't super memorize the rules of D&D, right? In fact, they constantly shout it out to the audience, what does this spell do? How much does healing word heal? Any of that. And the audience would have to shout back the answer. And so they will be moving to a completely different system, and maybe that doesn't matter at all. That'll be fun to see.
Next, I think they're the right kind of DMs too for that system.
Yeah. Chris Bergens kept letting people make a double move and then an action, and I think he was just like, yeah, I just want you to get there. Let's keep things moving. Next in our news is Stranger Things has a Target exclusive product. Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons Tales from the Table. And this is like a scrapbook type of book made by Jim Zub and Stacey King that collects like pieces of graph paper and notes and drawings and handouts that have been used in the kids' games in Stranger Things. So Mike, Will, Eddie Munson, all of their notes kind of gathered together in this scrapbook. It's $24.50. You can pre-order it now, only at Target, and I think it comes out in November. Yeah.
Stranger Things has been so good. I've just devoured every season.
Yeah, and I'm happy that they're continuing to see this sort of D&D side of things. I'm very curious what else the team at Wizards is doing to cross over. There's no way they didn't tie directly into this beyond. I mean, we know there's a starter set coming, but I suspect we'll see more, and I'm excited to see what we see.
I mean, I've been running the Vecna Eve of Ruin, and I mean, it was no coincidence they decided to do a Vecna-themed adventure, right?
Yeah, very cool. And I keep thinking there's got to be some sort of Cass side in the show, but maybe not. We'll see if they do, if they go that far in the parallels.
That would be good. I of course, there's that little bit of glee every time something you recognize.
Yeah, even when they do it differently, right? Like the Upside Down or their Demogorgon not exactly being our Demogorgon. I still thought that was fantastic and fun. So we'll have to see what this looks like and what the season looks like. It'll be and hopefully to see whether this causes a whole bunch of people to seek out D&D again, right? That'll be really neat. Let me know if your channel membership, triples or anything like that. So our last bit is really our main bit of why we brought you on, which is to talk about these Unearthed Arcana apocalyptic subclasses. And Shawn and I last week talked about how this seems to be a complete set of Dark Sun subclasses. I mean, they don't say the word Dark Sun anywhere in this UA, but it's Sorcerer King and it's Gladiator and Defiling. And did you play Dark Sun? Are you familiar with the setting?
I am familiar with the setting. I never played Dark Sun. I think I've read the second edition campaign setting, but I never got a chance to play it. I get the sense that you were a big fan.
Yeah, I really, really love it. If I'm ever like I need comfort time, I can just sit back with one of those books and page through it and just sigh contentedly. It's I played it forever when it came out, and then I helped write an organized play campaign for it, and so yeah, I know way too much about it. So I wanted to chat with you not just about what these subclasses are doing, but just the larger concept of how you look at these things. What does it mean for D&D to have Unearthed Arcanas? Just the larger topic of this. So let's start, if you would, giving a step back from that and tell us how you came to love role-playing games. How did it lead to your very successful reputation at Treantmonk's Temple for sharp analysis of rules, of optimization, of changes? What's your origin story?
Well, I've been role-playing. So I'm 52. I started when I was 8. So I've been doing it a long time. My brother introduced me to it with D&D, but I've played more role-playing games than I could possibly count or recollect. Every once in a while, I'll hear the name of one and go, oh, yeah, I played that back in the day. But I played more D&D than anything else. And I had a job that sucked. And I wanted to get out, but I wasn't qualified really to do any. I'm like, what am I good at? I'm like, I play a lot of role-playing games. And I had already been doing like written guides online just for fun, right? And so I thought, why don't I see if I can do something with YouTube? And I quit my job in 2020 and haven't looked back, right? It's been fantastic. And it's really just, it's the dream job because, sometimes, you go to bed and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, can't sleep. Well, I just go and I piddle away at my work for a couple hours, right? And it's fun.
That's wonderful. I mean, people often, there's that cautionary tale of, do a thing that you love and it'll become work, but it sounds like it's still fun for you. There's
still work. I mean, in some ways that is true. right? There's sometimes you just don't feel like it, but you got it because you that leads to not feeling like it tomorrow. And also there are parts of it that are work, right? Like, you just record that big video. Now I got to edit it, right? That's work. And I don't enjoy that part, but there's so much of it I love that I can live with the little bits that I don't love, right?
Yeah, that's great. I'm really glad to hear it because I think it's easy for a lot of people who work on streaming on YouTube to just end up in a place where, it's all the work and none of the fun.
Yeah, so, no, not yet.
Good. And clearly from your audience, all I have to do is look at your comments to see how much it means to folks and how much they enjoy engaging that. So that's awesome. And I want to talk about that a bit, which UAs come out. You look at a number of things, not just UAs, but you're very sharp and quick at looking at these UAs. When a UA comes out, how do you approach analyzing it? Like, do you have one of those amazing brains like some of my friends do that you can just look at the text and things jump out? Do you what's your process? What's your approach for looking at a UA? What are you looking for? How do you look at it?
Yeah. Okay. So, the very first thing I do when I look at a UA is the same as everybody else. So this most recent one, I looked at it, and the first thing I thought is, "Oh, Dark Sun," right? And then I looked at the different subclasses, and that looks cool. That looks cool. That looks cool. I like the concept there. They're the same as everybody else. Where it's a little different is, so I didn't start with rules analysis with my YouTube channel. I started with character optimization, right? Because that's what had always been interesting to me before I did this as a career. I've always been an optimizer. And I love to pour through the mechanics and find the little things. And I loved talking to other people about it. That's why I did the guides online, so that I could get feedback and people would have ideas that I didn't have, think of things I didn't think of, point out mistakes so I could correct them and just improve. And I filled a huge amount of my brain space with that, right? So as I go through mechanics, I am often able to just pick out things, like you say, where I can just immediately go, "Oh, that would work with this other thing in a way that they probably didn't think of," and I don't have to search because that other thing is in my brain somewhere. You talked earlier about memorizing rules for Jeremy Crawford. I have them memorized. I'm the one who could tell them what the range is of Healing Word and the amount it does and what it scales at. I almost every little bit in the player's handbook, I could probably just tell you what it is.
I love that. I love that
because I've just that's what I've spent my life on.
Yeah.
Right. If you talk to a mechanic about cars, they can tell you about the engine. If you talk to me about D&D, I can tell you about the rules. So they do. It jumps out at me often. Not everything. I miss things, just like everybody else. But it often does jump out at me. But that's not what I'm usually looking for first. I'm not looking for mistakes. The first thing I'm looking for is it original? Right? I want to know if I see something and it's like, oh, this is like that subclass and that subclass and that subclass, and they're just doing it again, right? They've packaged it slightly different here, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah,
that doesn't excite me, right? And I've seen it kind of go depending on which Unearthed Arcana they do. Sometimes they do that a lot. Sometimes they're not doing it that much. So that's the first thing, because I love new toys. I want to play with new stuff. And so when I see something that nobody has ever been able to do before, it doesn't even have to be all that powerful, but it's new and different, and that excites me. So I get a little endorphin lift from that. And then I start to analyze power. And because I'm an optimizer, I'm used to looking at power levels. And I'm also, because I have things memorized, I'll see a 6th level feature and I'm like, here's 32 6th-level feature subclass features in my brain. How does this compare to those, right? And so then I can measure power levels. Except when it's under Arcana, I'm not on the same team that I am if it's published. Because if it's published, I want it to be powerful so I can make a video and play it and all this stuff. When it's under Arcana, then I don't want anything to be too powerful because I like lots of options. And if they publish it and it's too powerful, it pressures me to take that. And so I get less options, not more. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. If everybody knows that it's like this happens in video games, right? If there's only the one way and you see every character is the same, right?
Yeah, what we've seen in D&D, Gloomstalker Ranger is a great example. Once the Gloomstalker was out, all the Rangers were Gloomstalkers, right? So yeah, I don't want that. So now this is where I like to use my platform because then I can explain to my audience, right, and say, here's why, compared to other 6th-level features, this is just better. We should let them know, right? And so that maybe we can give feedback. Now, I realize with Unearthed Arcana, they have a disclaimer right at the beginning. Don't worry about power levels. We'll deal with power levels. But they don't always deal with power levels. You know, we've been burned before.
I was going to ask, how do you feel like in general, when you identify an issue, not just a little thing, but like one of the major things or fairly where you go, this really should be changed. Do you feel like that's generally resolved or bettered in the final version? Or do you feel like most of the times you're just seeing it go through and remain the same?
I think most of the time it gets resolved.
That's great. Good.
Because what I have seen is, you know, I'll analyze an Unearthed Arcana, I'll talk about it, other people will talk about it. And then it starts working around like, oh, this feature is a problem, right? And then it gets changed. Like we saw this with the playtest because they would do the same class multiple times, right? And so we could see it change as they went, and I could see the feedback being listened to.
Awesome.
Right. So I've never had any question that they listen to our feedback. I've never had any question that they take it seriously. Well, I guess maybe I did at one point, but I don't anymore. They've just proven that they listen.
That's awesome.
But they don't always do it. You know? And sometimes things sneak through that we never saw. Right? Or they'll take something out because we didn't like it and put something else in that no one had a chance to respond to. And it's like, wow, I wish you had just kept the first thing. Twilight Cleric, there's a good example of that.
The Twilight Cleric. How do you feel about the quality or let's say the value, the benefit of the process of UA documents? Like, would you say that overall you look at these and say, this is more than marketing. This is good as a playtest?
I think it's largely marketing, right? Because, you know, you and I both saw this apocalyptic subclasses and we're like, ooh, Dark Sun. We're excited. That's what they want, right? They want that.
Or as my friend said, the big book of settings we're never going to cover. It could be that.
It could be that. They just because they released this doesn't mean that Dark Sun's coming.
Right.
But it gets us excited about it. And they wouldn't release it if they weren't thinking about it.
Right.
So it is largely marketing. And I don't always think that crowdsourcing is the best route to game design. But I do think there is some value in it because more eyes can be better than just like I've done it where I've just been looking at things on my own and then I share it with people and they find things that I didn't notice, right? So you get a huge crowd of people. They can find things that even your entire team of designers missed, right? So there is value in it, but there's also a lot of groupthink in the community, you know, and I don't always think it's for the better. So I had mixed feelings about crowdsourcing design.
We can all, yeah,
they do it,
I think
I'm going to participate.
If I hear you right, what you're talking about is that somebody might say, "Oh, this is too strong," and everybody starts saying it's too strong. But is it? But we all end up thinking a certain thing.
Yeah. Or what I find most often happens is something comes in and it's either strong or weak, and that's all that gets focused on. And then the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater because maybe it was a really cool idea. And it just needed rebalanced. But it gets such hate that it gets thrown out.
Yeah.
Right. So I've seen that multiple times. Yeah.
How important is it to you and maybe to your audience, the narrative aspect? Like, obviously you're focused on the optimization side, but when you look at something like these apocalyptic subclasses, is it important to you that they fit Dark Sun's lore? Do you think it's folks watching your channel, do they care?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I care, and my viewers care. I do think when we're talking about Dark Sun in particular, it's a little different than talking about Forgotten Realms, because Forgotten Realms already has been covered in 5th edition, right? Dark Sun has not, and probably my guess would be that before this Unearthed Arcana came out, you and I would agree that Dark Sun was not going to get a 5th edition treatment. Now it's come out. We still aren't certain, but there's now it's definitely possible, and I'd say probably over 50%, though a lot less than 100%. But I suspect it's likely. I mean, it's 100% they're looking at it, and likely we could say, but we're not going to get 2nd edition Dark Sun. That's not going to happen.
Never will. Yeah. I mean, it just can't.
So when I look at it, I have to keep in mind that I don't really know the setting, because the setting is not going to be 2nd edition Dark Sun. They can't do 2nd edition Dark Sun. And there's a lot of things you wouldn't want to do from 2nd edition Dark Sun, even from a mechanical standpoint. Like, do I really want all my a setting where character creation now has a different system for determining ability scores?
Right.
No, we don't want that. Right. Do we want a specific setting where your weapon breaks if you roll bad? No, we don't want that.
I want that.
Yeah,
but I hear you.
You don't want it. You might want it in your game.
Yeah.
And you can have it in your game. Yeah. But you don't want it in the book.
Right. And do you even want like a no clerics? Right. We've often had no divine classes. Does the larger gaming community really want that? When so many don't know what the setting is or its history, they may go, "No, that's terrible."
Now you're the expert. I thought you could play a cleric in Dark Sun, and you just got your powers through from the elements or something.
Yeah, you can if you switch it out to being elemental in nature. And so there were in 2nd edition, that was a very big thing. In 4th edition, there were power sources, right, that were declared, and so the divine power source was off limits. In part because they never really created what 2nd edition did. They didn't have their elemental book that went in and gave you this, and so it was an understood piece that you didn't have it. But of course, what we'd see is like, and if one very cute time, we were running Dark Sun at a convention for organized play, and Dad sits down with 2 kids, and the 2 kids are playing like, Diva Cleric, and it's an Angel Cleric and Dark Sun and something else. And we kind of, someone, Dungeon Master runs over and goes, "What should I do?" And I'm like, So we went over and said, you have fun at this game. Everybody at the table, we're going to allow this because they've put time and effort and they're very excited to play their characters they made. But just so you can't play divine classes in this campaign, and so and that's also not an allowed species. So you could use a pre-gen or just play a couple times, but if you come back to another convention, please follow the guidelines. And they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem," and everybody had a good time.
Yeah, I do restrictions in campaigns all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. But if I'm working for Wizards of the Coast and my job is to design Dark Sun for 5th edition. I have to keep in mind that this is not 2nd edition where Dark Sun is its own thing. There is now a multiverse and we're adding it to a multiverse where things can travel between planes, and you need everything to be compatible, right? And it didn't have to be that way before.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happens when the cleric from Forgotten Realms ends up in Darksun, right? Like, you have to have a universality to a number of things, and that changes Darksun. Right. You have to change Darksun to have that happen. That doesn't mean it has to change if you run Darksun.
Right.
But as a campaign book, they're going to release it as a multiverse set, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we just are
I hear the disappointment in your sigh there.
yeah, no, it is. But I understand it from a business perspective and from a larger community perspective. I mean, when more than half of your players began with 5e, I mean, what I love isn't what matters, right? And we have to look past that, and so the team should look past that, and so it may have things I don't like if it even comes out, and that's okay. But let me ask you a question about shifting a bit to the role of the audience, which is always not. This is important always. We try to tell our audience this all the time. It's not just you, the one listener. It's the multitude of all of us and how people feel about things. And so I wanted to chat with you a bit about the role of the audience, the online community, because we had a really interesting thing that happened where a number of folks, you included, have been talking about Warcaster in 2024, the wording on opportunity attacks, and this issue of because it doesn't say that an opportunity attack has to be taken on an enemy, Warcaster lets you cast a spell as an opportunity attack. You can, buff your party members when they walk past you. And the Dungeon Dudes, there were a number of great videos on this exploring it and what all could happen with it, which is very fun from an optimization exercise. But Dungeon Dudes recently had Justice Armand and Mackenzie DeArmas, two Wizards of the Coast D&D staff members, to talk about those interactions. And we've got a link in our show notes. And Justice and Mackenzie said, there are all these reasons why the language of 2024, if you just say enemy or hostile, this is tapping into larger rules around what it means to be an enemy. So they didn't want to have that word there. So because they took that word out, yes, this is kind of unclear. And Justice said, but hey, if you look at the paragraphs before, it's pretty clear what we're trying to talk about. But then in the end, they kind of ended up saying there is no real answer, is what I thought I heard. And Mackenzie said, yeah, I'd probably allow it at my table. And Justice said, maybe, but maybe probably not. Or he seemed to be less inclined to allow it. And
I think Justice was definitely in the camp of maybe. He said, I believe what he said is depends on the campaign. Some campaigns, some tables I'd allow, some I wouldn't. Mackenzie was more, I think it sounds fun and I would do it. Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, that's their answers, but it wasn't like, oh, if you look at the rules, there's this answer. I thought it was great to see them come out on a show. I want to see more staff on shows, on all of our shows. I think that was great. But do you think that sort of Wizards needs to answer to problems in the rules kind of this way? Like, is it good to say?
I think when there are answers, I would like to have them, especially if it's like in this situation, it was the answer was always going to be whatever your table wants to do, right? It was always going to be that way, and just behind the scenes, the whole thing was orchestrated. The whole thing about having Justice and Mackenzie on the Dungeon Dudes. There was a plan for this before Insight Check did the first video because Monty, Kelly, Jimmy, and I we're all buddies, right? And we talk, and Colby, it was, I think it was Jeremy who was on our group chat, and he said, what do you guys think about this interaction in the rules? And then Monty came out and said, well, it's not allowed. Right? Right. And then I said, well, I don't know about that, Monty. I think it might be allowed. And so we started a debate, and then we kind of agreed that it would be nice if the designers weighed in. And then it's like, if we all did videos, then Monty has some emails, and he's like, and then I could say, hey, this is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
come talk about this. And and it worked. And I loved the video. And I thought Mackenzie and Justice handled themselves so well. I was very impressed with both of them.
You can tell they're personable, good people.
It lifts my heart to know that D&D's in good hands.
Yeah.
And I after that video, I was just reinforced in the belief that it is.
Yeah. How do you feel about D&D's approach to things like sage advice and errata? Should there
wish they'd do more.
Okay.
No, it's not errata.
Okay.
They're different. So errata is a correction to a mistake. And I don't think it should be a rebalancing tool, or if it is, it should only be if it's a real problem.
The like Healing Spring, right? Healing Spring was an example of something like that.
Healing Spirit, it was called.
Spirit, thank you, yes.
Yeah, it's got the full brain of... Yeah.
Thank you.
Healing Spirit wasn't all that bad, honestly. That would be a case of overcorrection, in my view. But, yeah, I really think errata should be, for the most part, limited to errors. Not oh, we made this too powerful, or
so not to solve the
enough.
Twilight Cleric. You don't want to see it errata.
I don't want to see it errata, but I would like to see it just gone. But for sage advice, I wish they would do more, because I think they got away from it because sometimes I don't think it was always thought out beforehand, and then one thing would be said, and then another thing would be said, and there was conflict between those two things. We already saw that actually in the most recent sage advice, where whether something is a class spell or not. In the multi-classing section, it's just one thing, and then in another spot it says another thing, and they don't line up. But nevertheless, if you answer 95% of the questions, you still answered the questions. And so there's 5% of stuff we still don't know the answer to, but we didn't know it before. And what we do know is that the designers aren't sure either.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's better. I think that's better. And sage advice is one of those things where you're not having to mark up your player's handbook. Right? It's there if you want it.
Right. Guidance rather than a hard change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm all in for more sage advice. Errata, I think, stick to, you made a grammatical error, so it should have said this,
Yeah. So then I take it that you probably don't love the idea of D&D Beyond changing things digitally so that there's a lot of variance between our paper copy and our digital copy.
Yeah, no one likes that. I don't even think they like that.
Maybe.
The problem is, what do you do when somebody has a digital book? Do you not include the errata? So they have to look it up every time? What's the point of owning a digital book? So there's no easy answer. So I guess you could have two copies, the original and the errated version or something, but then you have double the amount of data. So I don't think it's easy with it, but nobody wants it, right? Nobody wants the book they bought to be outdated.
Yeah. So segueing a bit towards our Apocalyptic UA, if we step back and think about 5e design, do you think that 5e's design for subclasses makes it inherently really difficult to create a properly fun, impactful, engaging, flavorful subclass? I have a druid and I'm 6th level, and that means I had 2 touch points where they could tell me that I'm a druid that, greens the land or restores the land. Like, do you wish 5e 2024 had done something differently around subclasses?
I think they did a better job with subclasses in 2024 than 2014. But there's a lot of room there for it to be better yet. There's so many untapped resources there that, you just wish, and niches that could be filled that aren't filled. I do feel like they hamstrung themselves by forcing themselves to redo the same subclasses to a large extent when they could have gone with, where's our ranger that does traps? Where is that? We're still waiting.
That's in 4E.
Yeah. So it just, there's niches that I feel they don't fill. And there's always, like, I'll see these. I saw the Unearthed Arcana for the Arcane classes that was recent. And there was a lot more in it than the Apocalyptic subclasses. I forget how many subclasses there were, but it was a fair bit bigger. There were less ideas in that than there was in the Apocalyptic. So it goes back and forth, like I said. But there's definitely, I'm not going to announce anything, but I've been thinking about this as something that might be a content thing at some point.
That's interesting. Yeah, cool. One last question at the sort of broad level, which is, how important is it that one subclass is equally powerful to another? And in your mind, is there like a number, like it should be, within 10% or within 20%? Like, how forgiving do you think the game is to optimization, and one thing being like the other in power level?
I do not think everything needs to be equal in power. And I think if you concentrate on that too much, it stifles creativity. And sometimes you're comparing apples and oranges. But sometimes you're comparing apples and apples. So if you are going to just rehash an ability that is already in the game, it should be pretty balanced. Right? Yeah. If this class gives out this many temporary hit points, this many times per day, then you shouldn't make another subclass that at a lower level does more 4 times per day. Obviously. Right. But sometimes, you'll give something a feature and nobody else can do it. And we saw some of this in the latest Unearthed Arcana. There's, you got a sorcerer subclass that can expand hit dice and enhance spells that way. Nobody else can do that. So it's hard to compare it to. You have to kind of go, is that the same power as? But it's not going to be exact. And that's okay, as long as it's not so powerful you figure it's the subclass to take, or not so weak that you don't even want to try it.
Yeah.
That within that range, everything's fine. Right.
Cool. So let's jump into these apocalyptic subclasses. We only get a few, which ties into one of the comments you made. One of the things that I thought, and we'll talk about this a bit, is, boy, you'd want more. And so my thought is, either this is the great big book of settings that'll never show up, and therefore we're just getting a taste of some of this concept, or it is actually a Dark Sun book and it's so big that you just can't spend but so much space on classes, and so we're just picking a few. And one of the things I often think about, well, are these the right ones, right? And you've got an initial video that's great. I've got links to all your videos in my show notes, though I need to update it. And there are 4, is that right? 4 subclasses?
There's 4.
4, yeah. So the first one is the Circle of Preservation Druid. And you made a comment in one of your videos of, is preservation really the right word? And both from a lore perspective and from what this subclass do, I kind of agree. It's not really preserving, and it's actually not even restoring, which is sort of funny.
And the thing is so I looked more into Dark Sun after doing those videos, because it's like, oh, well, if they're doing a Dark Sun setting, I'd like to know more about the setting, because it's been a long time. And so with preservation magic, you're supposed to, it's an environmental thing that you're preserving, right? You're like an environmentalist in a world where there are many people who are devoted to destroying it, right?
Yeah. Well, and specifically, the druid is a nature person, but it's different than arcane magic. When you tap into the weave and Forgotten Realms, right, you're pulling energy from there. In Dark Sun, when you cast arcane magic is coming out of living out of the land, right? Like, and when you pull that, if you're not careful, you kill it, and that's called defiling. You have destroyed all the land around, and it's why the world is a desert. if you pull a little bit of that energy and are very careful and put it back in after you're done, that's called preserving. And that's not what a druid generally does. There is some wiggle room in the lore for sure. But in general, a druid is seen as protector of a land, more of a steward, the same way you might think of as a ranger, sort of, make this is my land, let's make sure you don't defile it, that kind of thing. But they're not necessarily preservers. So it's both strange, I think, from what the class does and from the kind of lore of it.
So what you're saying is preservation subclass should be an arcane caster.
Yeah, it really should be.
Okay.
Especially to really hit off that
have your reclamation druid be the druid. Yeah. But the weirdest thing was I read the description of that subclass, and then I looked for the features where you create plant life or preserve it. There's plant growth, but you need the plants to begin with. It wasn't there.
Yeah.
Wasn't there. And I that's one case where I think there was a disconnect, and that was the weakest subclass, in my opinion, from a design standpoint.
This class really,
the concept wasn't realized.
Yeah, and it really does. We see this in subclass design, where some subclasses have like the trick I do, and the trick you do is to create this sort of like zone of temporary greening, which we're told very specifically doesn't last, so you're not actually restoring the land, but you momentarily create this green land, and then you do sort of things that are reminiscent of the Twilight Cleric, and maybe a little too strong, and it kind of keeps stacking things on. Is that a do you like subclasses that maybe have the one trick they keep adding to? Is that okay?
I think it's okay if it's interesting and flavorful. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with an ability that builds as you go up. I mean, Moon Druid is like that. You're all in on wild shape. So the features are kind of building on your wild shape ability. I'm good with that. I'm glad there's a subclass that does that. I don't think every subclass should do that. Yeah. But as long as it's well done, I don't think that design should be struck off of don't do that. I think it's fine.
So here it's really just that power
not every
level.
feature needs to be unconnected to the previous feature. But it's you got to be bringing something that that feature that you're playing with better be a fun toy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fun toys, the Gladiator Fighter, you liked. I liked the concept too. It uses charisma to be a combination performer and warrior, the idea of being the showboat out on the arena floor. And it all centers around weapon masteries and getting extra weapon masteries that you can apply on top of what you're already doing, which can involve weapon masteries. Seems fairly flexible and exciting in play.
Yeah, I'm playtesting the Gladiator Fighter actually next week.
Oh, cool.
An 11th level straight Gladiator Fighter. And I built the character, and it is a little tough to build, to focus on that, because charisma is so important for it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like the Psy Warrior where, I want a good intelligence, but it doesn't have to be that good. Right. No, you really kind of need to have a really good charisma. And that was tough. But there are some tricks I'm going to be able to do that are going to be neat. So I'm looking forward to seeing how well they work. A lot of people were not interested in the idea of weapon masteries because fighters can already do weapon mastery. But doing 2 weapon masteries at the same time, particularly with a weapon that maybe couldn't do that mastery in the first place, gets my creative juices going and going, what can I do with this that is really interesting? And I think there's some stuff I think it's going to be fun. So
I think the fun potential, and if you were ever going to do this ability of extra flourishes, boy, an arena fighter is just so great. So I love the pick of where they applied this. That's
true. I think conceptually they were able. I wasn't overly impressed conceptually with how the concept and mechanics married for the druid. For the other 3 subclasses, I thought they did a good job. And this is one of the favorite UAs I've seen in a while, other than the Scion, which I also really liked. And I'm curious whether the Scion has something to do with Dark Sun as well.
Oh, yeah.
The Psionics are very big in Dark Sun, right?
Yes. Ooh, okay, that's neat. So Defiled Sorcerer, this was your favorite. What did you love about the idea of drawing energy from the natural world and even creatures, enemies?
Yeah. Okay. So the we kind of got a taste of this in Dragonlance because there was a feat in Dragonlance for the Black Moon where you could expand hit dice and kind of improve. But it was just one feat, one little thing, one little taste. Here we have a subclass that kind of really dives into it, and it's nobody else does anything like it, right? And so that's what I love. I love new toys, and Unearthed Arcana does not always give us new toys. Sometimes it gives us the same old toy with a different paint job. But this time it was new toys, 3 new toys out of 4 is pretty good. And the Defiler Sorcerer, of the 3 that were new, it was the one that really kind of tickled me, conceptually. Though I think that the Sorcerer King Warlock might be more powerful.
So we'll get to that one. Defiled Sorcerer, my problem here is, and even in 4E, we can see that there were Defiler Paragon paths. There's a Sorcerer King Warlock Paragon path. But my co-host Shawn on the Lorecast made a good point that, like, hey, Dark Sun is often seen as a place that has some issues with how dark it is in terms of its tone. And what can really help you get out of that is the fact that you're heroes. And now we're saying, I'm a Defiled Sorcerer.
And now you're the bad guy.
Yeah, you're the bad guy. How are you out there trying to help the world?
Again, I think I'd like to reserve judgment until I see what they publish, right? Because it's not going to be 2nd edition Dark Sun. So I don't know how this idea fits into this setting at this point. I was not thinking from a Dark Sun point of view when I said it was my favorite. I was just thinking, this looks fun. Whether it's the concept works for the kind of campaigns you're going to run in that setting is a different question.
Yeah, and Defiling, I think, is in my mind, like, if you wanted to hire someone to join the Wizards of the Coast team, giving them a test where you say, come up with how Defiling should work, I think is like a top tier level. How do you even make that work? And I think all the editions have taken different approaches, and it's been so it was interesting to me here that Defiling was baked into the concept, and you can give up your hit dice, but a couple times you can use an enemy's hit dice to fuel extra damage. That's kind of a neat trick, but it's a very different approach.
Or your allies' hit dice.
Or your allies, that's true, if they're willing to do it. But it's a little bit of a different take than previous editions. Like 4th edition, for example, said, if you choose to do a Defiling in a tough situation, you get to re-roll all your dice associated with this arcane power. And in exchange for that, the downside is it deals necrotic to friend and ally like around you. So tactically, you might be able to do it so it doesn't hurt anybody that's your friend, but you're in it. If your allies are in it, they suffer from it. And what that made it was, it made it a thematic choice. And that's very Dark Sun, the idea that every sorcerer, every arcane caster has to make that decision literally every time they're casting. Do I pull more energy for some benefit, or do I preserve? And I liked that. And I hope the setting, if we do see a setting, I hope it has that in it, this ability to make that choice, because I think story-wise, that's a lot more fun than saying, oh, I'm a Defiler, at level 3.
All right. So I'm going to be a little bit of a pessimist here.
Please.
And I'll say, I agree with you, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the last one's the Sorcerer King Patron Warlock. It draws power from a tyrannical figure as your patron. So that's probably one of the Sorcerer Kings in one of the city-states. Heavy use of the Frightened condition. What'd you think about this one?
I thought it was very good and very powerful. And not the use of the Frightened condition so much as the use of the command spell. And the command spell is a very good spell. Very, very good spell. And the great thing about command is, because it doesn't use concentration, if you can cast it as a bonus action, you can be concentrating on something else and have this very powerful thing you're doing with your bonus action round after round, and it upcasts really, really well. And sorcerer, and I should say warlocks have pack slots that automatically upcast. So, you have this situation where you're commanding with your bonus action, you're commanding with your action, you're not even concentrating on anything, and you are controlling everything.
Yeah.
And very powerful. I do think, now you talked a little bit about the defiling sorcerer and how it, the effect on the campaign world and how players interact with it. The thing that is better here is that with a warlock, you don't always have to agree with your patron, right? You're not always a soldier. You're often at odds with your patron, and so I think it can work from that aspect if you want to play that kind of game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you don't have to, you can be contrary to Team Evil, even though in theory you're in Team Evil, which then creates a lot of possibility of trying to pretend that you're still on Team Evil, and
and never or the anti-hero, right? And how many fantastic characters do we have in fantasy and other genres where the bad guy from the bad team joins the good guys, but he's still not really good? Those are always the best characters, right? And this subclass just screams that.
Yeah, awesome. So I see that the survey is actually out. I don't know that I see a date for when it closes.
It just opened on Thursday, last Thursday. So it hasn't been open that long yet. So this is, I mean, another thing we talked about, you don't necessarily know if they're going to do the dark sunsetting or not. The more responses they have to this, the more likely they will, because they'll see the excitement around it, right?
Yeah, absolutely, which would be great. So hopefully they keep it out for a while so people can properly read it. Maybe even like you're doing, play test it, have some folks out there that will run with it.
I would encourage anyone who wants to see this happen or has any interest in the future of the game, fill out these surveys. Go fill out the surveys. They're free to do. They're easy to do. I highly would encourage you to do that.
Awesome. Anything else that stood out that you want to chat about with this UA?
No, I mean, it was a pretty simple one. I actually like these small ones. They're a lot easier, you can really laser in on what's there. So I hope they continue with the smaller UA. Give us more bite-sized pieces than the occasional long, big meals, right?
Yeah, agreed. That makes a lot of sense. And it's also increases the chance that people can read it. I know that with some of the 2024 playtests, I would hear people on our Discord say, yeah, that's too big. I'm not going to read that. And so, this helps a lot. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for coming on the show. Greatly appreciate it. Keep doing the awesome work you do. It's so fun. And speaking of that, where can people find you if they want to, see everything that you do? Where do they go?
All right. So I really only do one thing, which is YouTube. So Treantmonk's Temple is the name of my channel. You can check it out. And I do have a Discord community and that's kind of stuff too, but it all kind of goes through the YouTube channel. So that's where you start.
Fantastic. So we have explored the deserts of some apocalyptic world. Chris, what are we going to do now?
Well, being that we're in the apocalyptic mood, I think I'm going to surprise my players and end the campaign world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. They won't have a problem with that at all. I think I'm gonna make a line of T-shirts that says "It is Dark Sun and the Apocalypse, and I feel fine." See on the world as we know it. I feel fine.